Hey, hello. My name is Nina Sendejas, and I am so happy you're here. We are here at Spotlight in London. We are here to obviously to do the ESL for accent. So we're going to be looking at RP, features of the received pronunciation in the UK, and comparing it to some Swedish, as well as comparing it to taking a deeper dive into how it is that we actually construct an accent itself. There are so many forms of accents in English, and it can be more than a little confusing about how to sort of proceed. I think the main thing is we are going to be looking, first of all, at how it is that we can move our mouth in general. So we're going to be looking at our equipment, getting to know our articulators, everything else that we need to actually form an accent. And then we're going to be looking at something called oral posture, the sort of mechanics of how it is we hold certain holding patterns of tension in the mouth and how that sort of turns itself into an accent, which actually applies quite a bit, especially when we're dealing with second language accents coming into English. A lot of times we end up taking a lot of our home sounds from the positions that we hold in our mouth into the new accent, which makes it a little confusing. So we're going to break that down a little bit. The next thing we're going to start looking at, which is very important for Swedish especially, is the rhythm and melody. So that will all hopefully be done within the first hour. And then the second hour, we're going to be looking at rhoticity and key consonants. So we're going to be looking at essentially the types of accents you might get in the UK and in America, and how it is that you can change it all up based on just the R and the L and key consonants that might sort of end up switching it up quite quickly. The other thing, which we may end up getting to this in the second hour, but it may be the third, we'll look at vowels and how it is that English speakers actually rhyme words together to create a really sense of unified sort of structure. And it may not be something that you necessarily even knew existed, but I'm sure you kind of instinctively picked it up. So either way, feel free to tune in and out. What we're going to be doing is we'll be doing about an hour and a half, and then we will take a 15-minute break. And if you have any questions at all, I'd love for you to email marketing@Spotlight, and I can hopefully address them at the end. So let's get started. This is the first thing we're going to be looking at, which should be actually on your articulators, the U and the new modified. So it should look like this on your actual worksheet. So if you turn to the first page, you're going to notice a face, which I've cleverly drawn over here. And this face is obviously a representation of our own mouth. Now, articulation has a lot of sort of history, especially in this country, in London. By the way, if you couldn't guess, I'm actually American, which will be a really interesting thing we can actually discuss going forwards about what it is I'm showing you for the RP accent versus my own, if you're interested. So what we're going to be doing here is getting to know our equipment. The first thing I'd like us to take a look at here are the lips. Obviously, we have lips and we can make many different sounds. I would totally encourage you to start to make some sounds with me. Even though I can't hear you, I'm sure you'll be making fabulous sounds. So, you can make things like trills or sort of explosive sounds like b. You can make many different weird sounds. You can send air out the sides of your mouth. It's a really interesting one. You really don't think of the many ways we use our lips. And actually, I think one of the main features that's interesting between a lot of non-native English sounds and English sounds is the amount of airflow coming out of lip sounds, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So we have those. Can I ask you now actually to take a second just to explore some lip sounds of your own? Go for it. Fabulous. All right, now there's the teeth. The teeth is interesting. You'd be tempted to click them, but obviously we don't necessarily make sounds that way. We may, however, in English, start to send air through the teeth. So you might go s or z or even zh, sh. All of those sounds are called fricatives, and they are a sustained friction-like sound, and we use them a lot. We might get them a little bit in Swedish, but I suspect not as much, but it's interesting nonetheless. If you actually could indulge me and try this, could you take the tip of your tongue, put it on the bottom of your top teeth, and I'm going to ask you to go ahead and sweep the tip of your tongue past the gums, and then you're going to run into a little stopping point. It's going to be like a bump or a ridge or a little wrinkly bit. Everyone's a little different. It could be really smooth or wrinkly. And just to be clear, you're going to be at the bottom of the teeth, coming up to the gums. It's going to be there, not all the way at the roof of your mouth. So you could try sweeping like this, and it goes all the way up. But we usually in English tend to make sounds like na, 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 like the letter N. So n or L, la, 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 la. Or you might make t, 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 da, da, da. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because in this small section of the entire mouth is where we can start to really change the accent. So you've got the possibility here of actually taking the tongue and placing it just against the teeth. And that will create what's called a dentalized sound, which I've actually heard in some of your amazing Swedish examples that you were so kind to send me. So we'll listen to those later. But you might get things like ta-ta, da-da, which in the phrase, what to do to die today, you might get what to do to die today. That might happen, right? Or if you were to almost aggressively place it right on top of the alveolar ridge, you could go, what to do to die today, which might sound a little strange, but it's on the way to sounding perhaps even like a sort of almost cartoony Indian sound. You might get what to do to die today if you retroflex, if you bring your tongue back just a little too much. So that's very fun. And I really strongly encourage you to play with that small area because it can make a huge difference. In English, we tend to actually place T's and D's just here. Now, it's such a small area, but it's basically not against the teeth, but it's not directly on the alveolar ridge. It's on the gum ridge. So if you actually could take the tip of your tongue, place it on the gums, kind of at the top of the teeth. Can you go, try just isolating the tongue and then a D, duh. And then what we're going to do is try to use your teeth now. It sounds strange, but I want you to try this. Duh. So you're going to bring your tongue into the gum ridge and your teeth together and then explode the sound away. Duh. So what to do to die today. What to do to die today, right? In American, you might get what to do to die today, which is a little flip, which I've actually heard some Swedish do as well. So you probably get that one rather quickly. So that's T's and D's. Then you might start to go upwards into the roof of your mouth. Now, this is the hard palate. We don't often use it in English anyway. Some French and some German might use it. The only time I've ever seen someone in English use it is perhaps a click, which isn't even something we necessarily use out of, joking. So it might be like, that's just kind of a fun sound to make. It's not like one we use every day. So we'll kind of go away from that. And let's talk about the soft palate. So the soft palate is actually all the way back here, and it's the soft muscle at the very roof of your mouth. It's close to the back of the throat. It's close to the back of the mouth. And if you try making sounds like NG, so or k, k, g, g, all three of those will work. And we use them a lot. Now there are some accents of English that actually do things like, so you might get like Liverpool might turn to Tschechen, or you might get some French and German sort of friction sounds there, but don't worry about that. For English, we're really going to be more focused on explosive sounds or sounds that are held. Great, and then we've also got the uvula, which is really fun. And it's the dangly bit at the back of the mouth, kind of like in a cartoon singer. You'd get someone going, ah, and it would just do that. We don't really use that much in English as well, but you might be quite familiar with it for German and French. It's the or sorry, disgusting sounds, but you know how they go. So we have to get used to making all of those things. Actually, why don't you give it a try? Can you try making a really hard scrapey sound 3 is the hardest it can go. Then there's 2, and then there's 1 is the least. Try the hardest scrape you can make back there in the uvula. So, and then less, and then the least. Great, now, can you make half of 1? Feel that little flick, maybe? That is the beginning of a little uvular tap or trill, which is so cool. You can use it for so many things, but not English, just to be clear. So, you know, it's useful. Good to know it's there. Now, the other thing to make a note of here is the nasal passage. So when we speak, we have sounds that go all the way either through the mouth or through the nose. There's a couple of sounds in English specifically that only go through the nose. These are N, M, and NG. So you might get where the tongue is on the alveolar ridge. And if you hold out an N, you could actually try plugging your nose. So I'll show you. It doesn't work because all the air is coming through the nose. And then try an M, which is made with the lips. And then a soft palate, NG. Great. Now, you could technically try to cheat and send some of the air through the mouth, but it wouldn't really be a full nasal sound. So, you know, you'd be cheating, but it's a cool thing. So all 3 of those are made back there. Now, that's nasal sounds. The pharynx isn't really, you know, we don't really talk about that usually in voice work in general. And this goes for English as well as I'm sure classic sort of Swedish acting training. You would have a nice sense of openness at the back of the throat to reduce on any sort of tension or damage that would cause the voice. This is a staple of many sort of pedagogies and methodologies. So that's not really an issue, but it's just worth mentioning that you may hear some vocal qualities, like you may hear in American, for example, you may hear a nasality. You know, in British, you might not hear so much actually. You might hear more of an openness back there. You might hear a bit more space actually in the middle of the mouth as opposed to, let's say, an American or like a Scottish, you might hear like back there. You might get a real sense of squish. If those 3 examples, by the way, confused you, don't worry. It's mostly just to give you some kind of an example of how the mouth can start to move when you sort of isolate one area. Now, the really fun part, and I say fun not that enthusiastically, but it is fun, it's the tongue. And the tongue has many different parts. Now, if you look at the bottom of your actual sheet that I've given you, it's a much better drawn drawing than what I've done here, so I apologize if it looks different. But we are looking here at the tip. So the tip of the tongue is if you were to stick your tongue out and go, right? That's the part that you use there. Now, a lot of times in English, we do not use that tip of the tongue exclusively. Like we don't use it alone. We often use it with what's called the blade, which is on here, the actual right on top of the tongue. So you could use, for example, T's and D's. You can use them on the gum ridge together. So you can go t, d. So you'd use that. Now, just be careful. Don't be tempted to go against the top teeth. You don't want to go t, d, or between the teeth even. So make sure that you're really kind of getting into that wedge right into the gum ridge. T, d. Good. So then the middle of the tongue, which you and I might call the middle, is actually what's called the front. I know it's annoying, but you could potentially use it a little bit on T's and D's as well in the United States and in the UK. But what I would say is that, you know, it's largely just a muscle that responds to the rest of the tongue. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. The back of the tongue, it can be quite active, but it depends on the accent of English. For example, the tip of the tongue in RP is going to be much more active than it would be in the United States. And in the back of the tongue would be far more active in the United States than the UK. The back of the tongue, though, will also be really active in, let's say, Scottish or Liverpool. So it's just kind of good to remind yourself that, you know, there are some parts of the tongue that it's literally a muscle, so it will just work harder than some others in different sounds. And then there's the root, which is actually, if you put your finger here, you can touch it. And if you were to make your tongue as stiff as a board, and then try putting your thumb into the soft, squishy bit under your jaw, probably won't move very much, like there's a board. Then if you soften your tongue a lot, you'll get a nice squishy feeling. So that's where it initiates from. And that also sort of ties into then the larynx, which is this bit, the part that holds the vocal folds. And that's where all of our sound comes from, etc. So that's really fast. I know that, but it's kind of good to revisit what it is we've got going on here, because sometimes, especially later on in this session, we're going to be talking really specifically about some areas of the mouth, especially when it comes to Swedish versus RP. And I want to make sure that we're all very clear on the terms. So I would say the most important thing to really pay attention to at the moment is going to be your teeth and the alveolar ridge, and perhaps even the lips for Swedish participants. So we'll just kind of watch out for those. All right. So if you scroll down now, or scroll down, I'm using an iPad. If you flip your page, if you're using Pages, you'll see that I have given you a chart. It's called the U and the New chart. Now, this chart that I've made is completely modified from the original. So this is actually from Jan, Hayden, Rowles, and Edda Sharpe. Their book, How to Do Accents, which is a fabulous book. I highly recommend it. There's a red book that takes you through the stuff we're going to do now. And there is also a blue book that takes you through all of the forms of RP. So I can highly recommend that one for you guys especially. There's also a green book now, which takes you through Irish. So hooray. By the way, the RP one, it takes you through the decades of RP. So you can do anything from Jane Austen to Love Actually. Right, so you could do anything on that scale. Great. So I have helpfully filled out for you the accent we're working with today. We're going to compare Swedish to RP. Now, what I would first like to talk about when it comes to accent work in general is this idea that we use our articulators, the things that move in our mouths to make sounds. We hold them in certain ways. And it's really fair to say that there's a difference between Swedish and English. What I would really like us to listen to first, I'm going to be playing some audio samples now, is an RP speaker, and then I'll play a Swedish speaker, and then we'll go back to RP so that we can hear the difference. And what I'd like you to pay attention to, and you won't be able to see them, but what I'd like you to do at home, excuse me, I'm so sorry. What you'd like you to do at home is I would love for you to listen to the sound if you can and try to pay attention and mimic them. So literally let your mouth become theirs. I'd like you to see what happens when you commit to the sound. If something changes in your lips, in the jaw, in the tongue, in the back of the mouth, if you can pay attention to that. The soft palate a lot of times confuses people, so don't worry too much about that. Focus on the overall feeling. Okay, so just give me one moment. Okay, here is some RP examples.
I got to Gardinor, which is where the Eurostar goes from, and I suddenly realised that I didn't have my passport. So, bit panicked, I called my husband, and he jumped in a taxi, and he must have got there about 10 minutes before the train left. So I did get to London, and I went to a festival set up like a rock festival, but it's actually a comedy festival. And I think it's one of its kind in England. It's the second year it's been running, and it was really good fun. And I saw 3 very big comedians performing on the large stage. And on the little stage, there were lots of up-and-coming comedians. I saw 2 of them, and they were incredibly funny. And at the end of the big shows on the big stage, there were fireworks, and we all had a really good time.
I have a dog. He's a black Labrador, and his name's Horace. And a couple of weeks ago, we went out for a walk, and there's lots of cattle prods sort of where we live. Horace is very scared of them, and usually he doesn't normally go anywhere near them, so we have to kind of walk around them. But a couple of weeks ago, he decided that he was going to investigate a little, I think it was a little a branch he'd found, and it was sort of wedged in the cattle prod, the cattle grid, sorry. And he decided that he was going to take a huge bite and try and dislodge it and maybe bring it to me for me to throw it for him. all I heard was this terrible howl. I went to investigate, and I'd found, to my surprise, that Horace had actually bitten into the cattle grid so hard that he lost quite a lot of his teeth. Oh, no. Well, ever since he's rendered himself quite harmless. Yep.
Kind of a sad story, but hopefully you had a second to listen to them. Okay, so I'm sure you have lots of opinions about what you just heard. They would be considered to be a somewhat more on the modern end of RP, but still quite, RP. For me,
I got to God.
If I'm gonna play her again, and I want to maybe mimic changing from my accent into hers a little bit, so I can kind of accurately comment on the lips. I was trying to stay silent before so you could have a chance, but let me work through it with you.
Which is where the Eurostar goes from. And I suddenly realised that I didn't have my passport. So, bit panicked, I called my husband.
The main thing I noticed with her is that she from where I'm coming from anyway, is my mouth tends to want to spread, which is a really big feature of American English, by the way. But the lips in this particular accent, I find, want to be quite relaxed. So I would definitely consider that to be a relaxed feature. And we're discussing RP, by the way. So the relaxed feature of the lips is pretty prominent. I also found that my jaw wanted to be quite relaxed and quite vertical. So my what's called my masseter muscle, the muscle that runs from here to here, wasn't bunched or tight. There was nothing held about the jaw itself, just relaxed. So long and relaxed. So I'm gonna say, just let's relax them both. Let's listen more for the tongue.
And he jumped in a taxi. And he must have got there about 10 minutes before the train left. So I did get to London, and I went to a festival set up like a...
Definitely from where I'm coming from, definitely a lot more tongue tip action happening. So I would say there's a lot of activity in the tip of tongue. It's quite active near the front half, but I don't really feel much going on in the back. I'm not sure if you do. Let's keep listening.
Rock festival, but it's actually a comedy festival. And I think it's one of its kind in England. It's the second year it's been running. And it was really good fun. And I saw three very big comedians performing on the large stage.
The large stage, yeah. There's something about the L, the large, as opposed to, let's say, how I'd say it, the large, So there's a definite switch to the front for me. So I would definitely make that a big note for myself. And I would say in general, it's active. Sounds silly because you wouldn't imagine there's a language that doesn't use the tongue, but it's important to kind of note that maybe the front is quite prominent. So the soft palate. Now, this is interesting. It depends where you come from. And actually, I've been listening to some Swedish, of course, in preparation for you. And what I've noticed is that I think especially, guys, this is really important. This accent, compared to where a lot of you might be coming from, it is quite lifted at the back of the mouth. So I'd like us to try a little exercise. Can I ask you to do that NG, right? I'm just going to write this over here. NG to ah. Yay. So we're going to do an NG. So it sounds like this. And then we're going to go to an ah. So try it. Now, can you try it with your fingertip between your teeth? The whole point of this is to take the jaw out of the equation. So we're going to do this. I'm sure you're quite aware now of the closing in the back of the mouth and the sudden opening. Now, can you try this? Imagine I'm going to give you a cupcake and it's going to be a wonderful surprise. So you're going to be almost like gasping on the ah. So it's going to sound like this. Okay. This is me with my cupcake. You may notice for me anyway, the sound really increased. My eyebrows got a little crazy, it went up, but that's what happens. As soon as we sort of initiate from the soft palate, the inner sort of muscles of the face sort of start to activate, and the eyebrows do as well, which is very normal. So now that you've got that soft palate awake, I'd like you to now mimic her again. And I'd like you to notice if that part of the back of the mouth is actually more open or closed For all of you, it might be a little different. For me, it feels pretty massively open, specifically in the middle of the mouth. It's almost like I'm making a bowl with my mouth. But let me hear what you think.
And on the little stage, there were lots of up-and-coming comedians. I saw 2 of them, and they were incredibly funny. And at the end of the big shows, on the big stage, there were fireworks. And we all had a really good time.
I have a dog. He's a black Labrador, and his name's Horace. And a couple of weeks ago, we went out for a walk, and there's lots of cattle prods sort of where we live. Horace is very scared of them, and usually he doesn't normally go anywhere near them, so we have to kind of walk around them. But a couple of weeks ago, he decided that he was going to investigate a little, I think it was a little a branch he'd found.
So they're both very interesting speakers. They have a lot of activity going on at the front of the mouth, but again, there's that lift. And I'm hoping you're kind of starting to feel that as well. A little side note is that I do realize that some of you may not be used to thinking about your lips or the soft palate. And so this can be kind of a weird experience initially. Just kind of try it out. And if something lands, then hooray. And if it doesn't, don't worry. But either way, I have noticed a massive thing with Swedish, especially that there's a lower soft palate than compared to RP. So now what I'd like us to do is we're going to listen to a Swedish example. And I am going to actually... you know what? I have a lovely audio from Henrik, who already sent one in. Hey, Henrik. But I think
Swedish.
Actually, we're going to start with him because he was so awesome to send it in early.
Sculptor Carl Milles, 1875 to 1955, was a towering figure in the Swedish art world during the first half of the 20th century. He was a productive artist that received many public art commissions in Sweden and beyond, at a time when cities were rapidly expanding and modernizing. In 1931, Carl and his wife Olga moved to America, where they would spend the next 20 years, with Carl working as a professor at the Cranbrook Academy of Art in Bloomingfield Hills, nearby Detroit, Michigan.
So first of all, I mean, Henrik, it's sounding great. Overall, you're sounding really, really close, about 70% there. There's a couple of things, though, that I think specifically in your oral posture are just slightly off. And I think that that might make a big difference. Another thing that besides oral posture, the lips and jaw and tongue and soft palate, is also melody and stress, which is something we're actually going to talk about in just a little bit. So hang on for that. But overall, the lips I've noticed for Swedish, and I might play another female example as well. We actually just got a last minute audio sent in from Tanya. I think hopefully it's how you say your name. I'm sorry. And what I want to see is if there's a similar feeling. I thought maybe, Henrik, your lower lip was a bit more stiff than the upper one. Strange observation, but that's how I felt, like it was a bit contained compared to RP, right? So let's see if there's something similar with Tanya.
And now it's getting dark outside and cold. Does it take the happiness from me? No, I don't think so. The evening air is cool on my skin. There are no farmers anymore. No dogs barking. Inside the house, people are talking, discussing politics and other people's decisions.
That was interesting, how she said politics. There's it's almost as if my lips, in order to achieve the politics, had to curl in a little bit, and it's like it became just sharper. It's what's called it would be a little more explosive. It's what's called a plosive. So I would say politics, as opposed to politics, it even went politics, which is interesting. So you've got actually is a reduction of air in the Swedish examples so far. So on P's, B's, T's, D's, we'll talk about consonants later, but on those so far, I'm noticing that. So actually, I might just say that I am noticing Tanya, for example, is relaxed, but maybe a little held. Right, and I would probably, Henrik, I'd probably say the same thing about you as well. A temptation to hold in. Okay, let's pay attention to the jaw, maybe.
A normal life.
A normal life.
Will you ever have one, Tanya?
Tanya?
I wonder, a really normal life with a family, kids, pets, a great job and loving people. Perhaps. I don't know yet.
Okay, so I'm noticing actually with Tanya specifically is that I'm totally holding my jaw in a place. Now, keep in mind, I would totally buy that if you guys out there are all mimicking Tanya with me, you might be feeling something very different. And that might be because, of course, you might have a very similar setup to her. You're used to holding your muscles in the same way, maybe. I personally, as an English speaker American, feel that my jaw is being slightly constricted and held. So I'm going to make that observation. I want to see, though, what Henrik does. Just give me one moment.
Swedish sculptor Carl Milles, 1875 to 1955, was a towering figure in the Swedish art world during the first half of the 20th century. He was a productive artist that received many public art commissions in Sweden and beyond, at a time when cities were rapidly expanding and modernizing. In 1931, Carl and his wife Olga moved to America, where they would spend the next 20 years, with Carl working as a professor at the Cranbrook Academy of Art in Blue.
Henrik, you've got a nice ability actually to occasionally relax that jaw, but I think that you also have a tendency to hold it slightly, which, by the way, for both of you, would then impact on the way that the rhythm comes out. So it's all probably tying together. So this is really cool and interesting, but you both have a similar-ish thing going on. But yeah, Henrik, you had the ability to relax it into the RP vowels quite accurately sometimes. So yay. The tongue. Now this is interesting. Let's keep going with Henrik since he's up.
Field Hills, nearby Detroit, Michigan. The work of Carl Milles can be described as both traditional and innovative, as Milles frequently drew inspiration from mythology and the art of antiquity. His innovative side reveals itself through his personal interpretations of the motifs. Milles sculpted in hard and heavy materials, such as granite and bronze.
Henrik, I would say actually you are very, I think Swedish actually in this one way is quite similar to RP. The tip of the tongue is quite active. And I think I've heard in some Swedish as well that you would do like ara, ara, a rolling R. Like dran, that's not a word, I hope. But you might do that, for example, a little flip. But you're not doing that particular R in the sound. But what I'm hearing is that the tip of your tongue is just used to being active. You're also kind of using T's and D's, a little bit more of the blade of the tongue, actually, as opposed to against the teeth. So the thing I was mentioning earlier to look out for, that's something maybe we want to look at. Let's listen to somebody else.
Once upon a time, there was a very curious little boy who lived in a large house with a most magnificent garden. One day, a very old and frayed woman came to the house and wanted to sell the family some flowers.
Yeah, I'd say we can clearly say it's an active part there. So very active, and it's the tip as well. So yay, we have complementary things. Yay. The last thing I just want to make a note of is just to listen back to, sorry, I'm trying to find the audio, to Tanya again. Listen for the soft palate. So we're listening for any kind of nasality or a flat sort of quality to the sound.
But now it's getting dark outside and cold.
Wonderful ups and downs.
Does it take the happiness from me?
The happiness from me?
No, I don't think so.
So the way I said no, I was supposed to there's a slight compression in that muscle in the back that's causing that overall tone sound. Let me just see if Henrik is doing the same thing.
Swedish sculptor Carl Milles, 1875 to 1955, was a towering...
The word 19, that was interesting to me, Henrik. So you have the na, it's just like it hits a wall back there. So if you go 19, if you raise that soft palate and lift the back of the throat, both of you, that will totally change the sound. Can everyone try this? Can you go 19? 18, and think of keeping that lift? It's really hard. 41, 41. Yeah, so it'll feel like a workout, especially for any of you guys coming into it because, whoops, from 2 examples we've had, I would say that we actually have a low word here. So that's where it becomes interesting to check out oral posture. We can start to see from very small examples a possibility of a pattern forming, right? So we've got RP, it's relaxed, relaxed, it got an active tip, and it's lifted. So we've got activity in the front, lift in the back. And for Swedish, we've got relaxed and held, held, active, and it's low. So we've almost got a reversal of the back of the mouth, and that can cause some interesting stuff. So if I lower my soft palate and I do a bit of activity in the front of the mouth, you might hear that it sounds different than if I were to lift the back of my mouth and try it that way. So you really can get a lot of assistance from just observing that. Okay, probably enough of that. Now, I'm just going to switch gears here. Give me one moment. Great. So now let's talk about hesitation. So hesitation sounds, so hesitation sounds are interesting. In English, we have several ways of hesitating. So I might hesitate with, or I might hesitate with am. It depends on which one you're doing and what accent you're coming in with. As an American, I'd go as somebody else from this country, from the UK, you might go probably a slight hint of an to it. This is important because it's essentially our snapshot of the accent. Now, if I were doing the British RP, you could do excuse me, and then you could count. So you could put your hand here on the sides of your cheeks. Imagine you're sending that sound into the midline of your cheek. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, the point of this, by the way, is not to just mimic sounds, it's to warm up that lift at the back of the mouth and in the bottom of the tongue. So you're going to be creating a lot of space in the middle of your mouth doing this exercise. So if you can retain that space while you then say words, that's the dream. So let's try that one more time. Can you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So hopefully that had some success. Just so you know, the American one shifts. So you go, so the back of the tongue is going to come down and the middle of the tongue is going to cup slightly. So you get 1, 2, 3. You can hear almost how it sounds darker further back. Now, of course, we are talking about RP, not necessarily a London sound or anything like that. So it will relax slightly the more contemporary and London it gets. But let's talk purely RP for now. So that's hesitation. Prosodic features. Now, this is really interesting with Swedish especially. Prosodic features basically means melody, rhythm, and stress. So I'd like us to, I'm going to play you some strangers that are RP examples. And I'd like us to see if we can come up with a phrase from their audio that we can then draw out the melody of. And then we'll try the same thing with a Swedish example speaking English and see how we go. Okay. So this is a male example, I believe, from a voiceover.
Devon and Cornwall. Stunning beaches, picturesque villages, breathtaking countryside, and bustling towns. This vast 4,000 square miles of diverse landscape means keeping this popular holiday destination safe demands a unique style of leasing. Whilst normally dealing with locals on their own doorsteps, when the summer holidays arrive, 11 million pleasure-seeking tourists descend.
So did you hear that when it goes, let me just back it up a little. Hold on.
11 million pleasures.
1 second.
4 steps. When the summer holidays arrive.
When the summer holidays arrive. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. When the summer holidays arrive. Might get that.
10 million pleasure-seeking tourists descend.
Million pleasure-seeking tourists descend. So you get a sort of rise and fall in the sound. This wouldn't be uncommon because obviously Swedish has a really interesting feature of it where there's some accents, I believe, of the language where it has a sort of internal word rise and fall. So you might get some words that have do versus do. You get that sort of rise and fall mid-word. It's similar actually to Chinese in some ways, but not totally. I do understand. It'd just be within a couple of key words. There's a couple of famous examples, but English is, of course, a stressed-based language. And that means that we pick 1 or 2 things in a sentence to really stress into. Now, the way we stress sounds can really vary depending on the speaker, depending on the accent. This guy, he tends to use volume. He doesn't use volume. He uses rise and fall, and he also uses a sudden accent of some sounds. So, for example,
Devon and Cornwall.
Devon and Cornwall. Do. Right? So let's just go with that. So where's the highest pitch, part of his pitch? Let's listen again.
Devon and Cornwall.
Do. I'd say it's Devon and, so you might go Devon and where does it go? Let's find out.
Devon and Cornwall.
Devon and Cornwall. Yeah, Devon and Cornwall. So you might go down, might not go up, to go down. So Devon and Cornwall. But now, so we have a high peak here and we have a down. Now, it's funny, you can see how many ups and downs I've written. It may not be 100% accurate. Let's listen one more time.
Devon and Cornwall.
Do. At the very least, you can definitely say Devon and it goes up, Cornwall. At the very basic, you have up, down, right? But within that, you have a little bit of flexibility. Can we try that? Devon and Cornwall. Fantastic. Now, if you were to go American, for example, Devon and Cornwall, you would get a much simpler sort of thing. You might go Devon and Cornwall. We tend to go down, like everything's a statement, right? So that's the main difference between, let's say, UK versus the United States. So Devon and Cornwall, boom. Now, of course, he's doing a voiceover, and if I were doing a voiceover, it may be a little bit more jazzy. You might say Devon and Cornwall, but it might just start higher in pitch and then go lower, as opposed to being more casually started lower. But neat, let's keep going.
Stunning beaches, picturesque villages, breathtaking countryside, and bustling towns.
Did you notice he did that for all of them? Listen again.
Stunning beaches, picturesque villages, breathtaking countryside, and bustling towns.
So that's kind of cool, nice and predictable for us. Now, I'm not saying that every voiceover artist should necessarily be that predictable, but I think it's great for us to see what his impulse is.
Vast 4,000 square miles of diverse landscape means keeping this popular holiday destination safe demands a unique style.
So whenever he emphasizes a word, I'm thinking you're hearing it too, he goes up, right? This unique landscape, and and so he always has somewhere to fall down to. Cool, that's fun. Let's listen to a female example.
The flight of the humble honeybee is worth a closer look. And we've managed to capture these tiny insects.
Right? So we've got a same thing happening. We've got a rise and a fall, a rise and a fall. So cool. Now, by the way, there's something that I noticed that Henrik did, which was he was actually doing that. And maybe we can listen to him very briefly now.
Swedish sculptor Carl Milles, 1875 to 1955, was a towering figure in the
So actually, right away, Henrik, you're doing fabulously. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. That's accurate. What is it that makes it sound slightly off? Let's listen again.
Swedish sculptor Carl Milles, 1875 to 1955, was a towering figure in the Swedish art world during the...
So, the very beginning of it, actually, I'm just going to...
Carl Milles, 1875 to 1955.
1875 to 19... Let me get the numbers again.
1875 to...
1875. No, it's going to bother me. Hold on. 1875 to
1955.
To 1955. So if we were following the actual example given to us from our RP speaker, we might go 1875 to 1955. Now let's see if Henrik did that.
1875 to 1955.
So a little flatter on it. It was like you kind of got close. 1975 to 1955. It's like it didn't quite have the height that the RP was used to. Now, by the way, the Americans would totally understand that because that's very difficult for Americans to do as well. We're not used to going up really high. It's just not inbuilt. So it always feels, for people like us who aren't used to speaking with a lot of height in our sound, in the pitch, it'll always feel like too much. So don't be afraid, everybody, to go really big initially. Let's listen again to the full sentence.
1875 to 1955 was a towering figure in the...
Was a towering figure. So this is cool. There was a hesitation before this sound. Was a towering. And I think it's happening throughout the whole thing. 18, if you write out 18, there's a T there as well, to, oh my gosh, 19. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry if I misspelled it. 19, I haven't, hooray. So 1875 and 70 also. There's one there. 1875 to 1955, 50 was a towering figure. So you've got an interesting pattern happening, Henrik, where you have a hesitation slightly right before your your T's. Listen again.
1875 to 1955 was a towering figure.
So the one that's the most obvious, of course, is the T. What I would say about the rest of them is that they're not too bad, actually, now that we re-listen, but I am noticing that you're not really releasing air. Can everyone try something for me? Can you do the letter T? Can you go t-t-t? Now, on a scale from 5 to 1, 5 being the most air you could throw out of a letter T, can you do that for me? Can you go t-t-t? And then a 4, t-t-t. 3, t-t-t. 2, t-t-t. 1, t-t-t. So that one's almost non-existent. Sounds like, not sure if you can hear it from where I'm sitting, but it would start to sound like 18, 18, 18, 17, 19, 20. You might get that sort of withholding of air. What I need from all of you, and Henrik especially, is a 3 to 4. You need air. So 1875, 1955, and then was a towering figure. And you might even say figure in this country. So a towering. Try not to hesitate. Not a towering, but a towering. You're going to feel really weird, like you have to like spit everywhere, and I understand that. But that's a big feature of it. Now, we kind of took a little bit of a sideways step from the ups and downs of the speech, but I would say if we go back to that.
5 to 9, Milles, 1875 to 90.
18. 1875 to 1955. 55. So actually on its face, it looks pretty close to it, but I would say if you could go further into the arc, that would be ideal. So this requires you to do something you're not used to doing, and that is giving more time for the vowel. So Swedish has a lot of compound consonants, consonants that come right after the other in words. And you guys have a special like superpower to do them. I don't know how you do, but you're great. But what we tend to do and what our P tends to do specifically actually is sing on the vowel a bit more. So you might get 1875 to 1955. Ay, ooh, straight. I'm able to do that now. So if you can try this for me, can you put up your hand and can we lean into the vowel? So can you go 18, ay, try that, ay, 18, and then make sure that T is coming forward. 1875, ay, 1875, I, 1955, I, 1955, 1875 to 1955. Yeah, as opposed to 1875 to 1955. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not sounding like you, Henrik, but that's the idea. We don't want to crunch all the consonants too close together. We need to actually give more. You're going to feel strange at first again, but it will help. And that will help you get the sort of broader arc of sound from the melody. So if you go back to your sheet, you'll notice that I've left you quite a lot of space to write there. But fill out whatever you need if you want to make notes. Essentially, we've got in Swedish probably a tendency towards a slight bouncier sound, dun 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 dun, as opposed to the longer sort of arc of RP, right? So we've got a longer length of phrase in RP, and we've got a shorter, sort of segmented sound in Swedish. That's kind of a baseline, but let's leave it there for now. Neat. The stress patterns I might leave for now, and we'll come back to later. Okay, maybe when we get to more words. All right, so R's. We are shifting gears over to R's now. So the letter R is really interesting. We've got so many possibilities here for different accents depending on what R you use. Now in Swedish, again, I've noticed you have a really fun tapped R, like ara, but we'll talk about that in 1 second. First, let's talk about something a little more basic, which is, and just give me 1 second. Rhoticity. Right, so we have in this country 2 possibilities for R's usage. Now, R's in the spelling are either voiced, meaning they're said, or they're not. In American English, which obviously is where I'm coming from, so that's easier for me, it's what's called a rhotic accent. So we have an accent that uses all the R's. So you might get, for example, if you look one page on page 3, there's a phrase that says, Margaret and Jerry were very rowdy after drinking the terrible water. If you notice, I say all the R's. There's another kind of accent, which, as you guessed, it is the one that RP does, and that is non-rhotic. I'm just going to say non-R for ease. So we've got here a non-rhotic accent. Now, a non-rhotic accent is going to drop R's somewhat predictably. So we've got R's that are dropped at the ends of words. For example, mother, brother, water, after. Then you might also get R's that are dropped in the middle of words. Now, this is usually done when an R follows a consonant. So for example, Margaret, you won't get Margaret, and you won't get Margaret. I'm not going to have that second one gone because that R is between two vowels. You're going to get Margaret. When you can afford to lose it because the consonant's coming, that's when you'll drop it. So if you go to the sentence with me, you're going to get Margaret and Jerry were very rowdy after drinking the terrible water. Try it. I can hear the sounds of perfect RP. Okay, fantastic. So what I'd love to now talk about is this idea that in non-rhotic accents, we've also got some other things happening. In non-rhotic accents, we not only drop R's, but you might hear some British speakers do this. You might hear them connect R's together. So for example, if you have someone who says, mother and I. Normally on the word mother, you would drop the R, mother. But in this case, it's quite likely that you're going to hear someone link it to the next word, mother and I. It sort of ends up being that you have two vowels on either side of the R again. So you need it to help connect the word. You might get someone who says mother and I. You might do a little glottal, like it goes, mother and. But I'd say connect it, makes it easy. For RP, it tends to be that way. The other thing that may happen is you may get someone who adds in R's when they don't belong there. So for example, you might have somebody say, instead of Martha and I, you might say Martha and I, which is fun. So it happens usually exclusively in non-rhotic speakers. Americans, for example, would never do this. Probably because we have too many R's already. But this one, you know, we tend to have R's coming in whenever. Not whenever, just whenever there's two vowels in a row. Incidentally, very similar situation to here. I have also heard my own name, which is Nina, add an R at the end for whatever reason. Nina, no. So there's no R there, but it happens. So in some accents like Cockney, or Essex, or you might even get some London accents, you might see that intrusive R. Just so you know, RP does not have intrusive R's, not historically and not like at its most heightened, but you will get linking R's. Cool. All right, so now if you go to page 3, we are going to talk about the types of R's. Because you may have noticed also that when I'm giving my examples, I may have to switch up the kind of R I'm actually using in order to sound American versus British. That's because I am. And I will tell you how they're all made. So let's go to the types of R's. Give me one moment. I'm just going to draw on the board. Let's just go there. Cool. Excuse me. All right, so we have a tap. Now, this one might be quite familiar to some of you, but let's play with this. So a tapped R sounds like this. Ara, ara, arrange, arrange, around. It is not like arrange, around. That would be what's called a trill. But a tap is a single sound that is made quickly against an articulator, oftentimes with the tip of the tongue on the alveolar ridge. So if you were to use the phrase that I've given you, Margaret and Jerry were very rowdy after drinking the terrible water. If you used it all with taps, you might sound like Margaret and Jerry were very rowdy after drinking the terrible water. Fun. If you were to, that's a rhotic version of a tap. If you were to make it sort of as a non-rhotic, you might go, Margaret and Jerry were very rowdy after drinking the terrible water. Now, I'm trying not to change too much of my own natural accent, but you might start to get things like Welsh or Liverpool. The first one, you might start to sound almost a little bit Indian, or even you could sound a little bit, hold on, Margaret and Jerry were very rowdy. You might sound a little bit, I don't know, inconsistently Italian or something else, but it really depends on the speaker. the thing that makes your job so challenging is that every single one of you is unique and different. And all of your experiences with English is going to change the way you sound. So this is not like a formula everyone can follow necessarily. So it does require some extra investigating. I would wonder, guys, because this sound is in Swedish, I would look out for it because it doesn't really exist. It doesn't exist in RP. It does exist in a heightened RP. So you might hear an old-timey sort of, if you ever watched The Crown, for example, they might say, very mere, very mere. You might hear that little flip. That's accurate, but that's not in the modern version. So watch out. Okay, a trill. This is a sustained little flip of the articulators. It sounds like this, or right? That was the lips, the tip of the tongue on the alveolar ridge, and the uvula. Okay, if you can do all three, you're a wizard. It sounds like this. It's fun. So you can do that. Fun party trick. And the trills are not used in the UK much, unless maybe in Scotland or other areas, but not really for RP at all. But we can explore. Try the lip trill. Maybe the tip of the tongue trill. That's where the back of the tongue is down. Or you could try lifting the tongue up against the sides of the teeth and throwing air through the top, through the middle of the tongue. And it goes against the alveolar ridge that way. The other one is that scrape that turns into a trill that we tried earlier. So it goes, just so you know, took me 2 years to learn that one as an adult, and I did it. So it's possible. People who use that might be, I'm not sure who does this one. That'd be really funny if you just had somebody go like, a blah. But I'm sure there's some cartoon that does it. So keep that one in your back pocket. The other one, that's obviously Spanish, might be Indian Arabic. You might also get back here Arabic as well. You might also get French, German. The tip of the tongue trill. I'm not sure if Swedish does it. I know it's a tap, but I'm not sure if you trill. You can tell me maybe actually in the comments. That'd be wonderful. Okay, now here we come to the RP sound. So an RPR sounds like this. Ara, ara. So this is the top teeth. This is my tongue. The tip of my tongue comes up towards the alveolar ridge. Sorry, I might park it a little bit further back then. The alveolar ridge. It curls slightly, and simultaneously the lips round slightly. So you might go ara, ara. So you're gonna want to show me the underside of your tongue a little bit. Can we try arrange? Around. Trying to think of words now. Can we try river and rainbow? Great. Let's try it on the phrase. Margaret and Jerry were very rowdy after drinking the terrible water. Margaret and Jerry were very rowdy after drinking the terrible water. Hooray. This one can be a little difficult because it doesn't feel like it's anywhere in the mouth. And I completely understand if that's a little tricky. The real thing I would really watch out for, guys, is to not add in too many R's. The main thing about this accent is that it is completely non-rhotic. We don't get any ending R's or the ones that we described. So if you accidentally do this, for example, if you become inconsistent, Margaret and Jerry were very rowdy after drinking the terrible water. That's when it starts to sound weird to native ears. You're like, oh, what happened with your R's? So make sure you've got all those sorted and you should be good. All right, neat. Now we come to the American sound, which is fun. So we've got what's called a bunched molar R. If you take up the tips of your fingers and you have, imagine you have a white pad of ink in front of you. Take the tip of your fingers, dip it in, and then up. And then we're gonna put them on the sides of your tongue. So, right? And then refresh. And now I want you to put these two dots on the back teeth and the roof on the top of the mouth. So like this. Great. Now we're gonna join the dots, sides of the tongue come up, and you're gonna make a bowl shape with your mouth. Good. Now, this is the molar part. Now you've got to bunch the tongue back. So we're going to do this. Her, and the lips are going to round slightly as well. So we're going to go her. So can you try hooray? Hooray. Hooray, Geraldo. You can put up your hands, mention you're brushing your teeth. Hooray, Geraldo. And then if you said hooray, Geraldo in British, hooray, Geraldo, I think. So you might get, back to American, the bunched molar. Margaret and Jerry were very rowdy after drinking the terrible water. It's a lot. It sounds really squishy and like there's a lot of consonant in the way. Accurate. But I think I've heard a few examples actually of some lovely Swedish people speaking, and I think you might actually have this one down for the most part. I know I'm not speaking about everyone, but still. Okay, neat. One of the last two, retroflex. The tip of the tongue. If you put it once again flat on the bottom of the mirror mouth, relax it, then the tip of the tongue is going to come up towards the gum ridge, and then it'll curl slightly towards the middle. So you might get ara, ara. You're going to feel like a pirate. So can you go hooray, hooray. So you're going to go Margaret and Jerry were very rowdy after drinking the terrible water. I started to go Irish, which is what it will be eventually. Margaret and Jerry were very rowdy after drinking the terrible water. You might get that. So you can do that, and that's fun. Or you can, again, do a good pirate sound. I would say, guys, because a lot of Swedish uses a tap, the tip of your tongue is going to be so used to being worked, you might accidentally do this R when you're doing the British one. Just be careful. Don't curl too much. Cool. And the last R possible is what's called a substitution. So you might get somebody doing a W or a V. So you might get a W or a V. So usually it's a funny combination of the two. You might have heard it in the King's Speech, actually, King George. So you might get that saying Margaret and Jerry were very rowdy after drinking the terrible water. It's sometimes referred to as a weak R, but a substitution for a different consonant is, I guess, technically what it would be. We're really just using other parts of our mouth to make a similar sound. So what I would say, guys, is let's end with doing the RP one again. So we're gonna take the tongue up and we're gonna bend it slightly and round the lips as we go. So Margaret and Jerry were very rowdy after drinking the terrible water. Neat. All right. So, L's blasting through. And actually, I'm sorry, I didn't actually end up writing down anything on that board, and I think I'm just going to get rid of that so that we don't all stare at it. Excellent. L's. This is another interesting one. So we've got lots of different types of L's in this country. We've got what's called a light L, which is what I hear in Swedish a lot of the times. It is the la 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 sound. So the tip of the tongue is going to be arching towards the alveolar ridge and tapping against it. So you might get Larry, lazy, lamb, slept, peacefully. And then if you continued it on, it would sound like this. Filled until hailstones fell. So if you committed to a full, just a bunch of light L's in a row, you get Larry the lazy lamb slept peacefully in the field until hailstones fell, which sounds a little Welsh or it sounds a little bit something. You might end up recognizing that maybe you do this, and that's really cool and interesting. I'm curious, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but maybe, can we listen to someone else I have? See if we can listen to this.
Hello, hejsan. This is Tobias Persson, or Tobias if you will. I'm a 39-year-old Swedish stand-up comedian and actor. And I can sing if I have to. And I can do the Swedish voice. If you need the Swedish melody, I can do a bit of this. Sort of insecure, but I can try to add that if you need that for some weird voiceover.
And I can do this voice for some reason. It's just pointless, but I have it.
Well, Well, that was completely unhelpful. I apologize. Let's go for a different one. Let's try this.
Quality, functionality, and simplicity.
Yeah.
Come and enjoy the latest work of Sweden's finest interior designers, showing at Kensington Olympia in London from the 11th to 15th of May. This is what you have been waiting for. One of Scandinavia's biggest new bands, Mayhem. Tracks include Stars and Winter. Mayhem, out now in your store.
Yeah, so she definitely is very comfortable using the light L's. You also heard her say the word fell, which she said fell. So she continued it on, which means that just in case, this might be something that you want to watch out for. I'm not saying you guys necessarily do it. Like I'm not sure. I don't think Henrik does this, for example. But I would just say that, we'd want to watch out. It may kind of creep in when we're not looking. So, okay, now let's talk about the other kind of L. So we have a dark L. A dark L, you might start to get in northern accents in this country. You might get them in Scottish accents. You will definitely get them in American and Australian. It sounds like this. Oh. So what happens here is this is the top of your mouth. This is the bottom, the tongue. The tip of the tongue is likely going to be on the alveolar ridge, and then the back of the tongue is going to arch. So you might get oh, and it might kind of retract backwards. Now, it'll feel a little choky initially, and I apologize about that, but it's just unfortunately how it goes. So can you try trapping the tip of your tongue between the front teeth? Okay. Now, can you keep it there? Don't let it move. And try to make an L with the rest of the tongue. So, oh, you'll feel it here. It'll go backwards, right? Be a little gross. It's okay. Now, can you go Larry, lazy, lamb, slept, peacefully, field, until, hailstones, fell. I'm exaggerating it just so you can hear it, but now I'll relax it. Larry the lazy lamb slept peacefully in the field until hailstones fell. In northern accents in this country, you'll get that. Larry the lazy lamb slept peacefully in the field until hailstones. I don't know, it's terrible, but you might get something like that. And then you might get Larry the lazy lamb slept peacefully in the field. Larry, it might get that tap on Scottish, maybe. I have also heard some Swedish people be quite confident with this sound as well. Hooray, because if you look to the next thing, the combination of L's is exactly what we want. And actually, I'm sorry, I just realized that there's an error in the sheet that I've given you. It just says combination L, light and dark. I put L and U, so it should be L and D. Sorry about that. The combination goes like this. You have on the beginning parts of words, a light L. And on the second half of words, meaning where the L ends a word, you'd have a dark. So you get Larry the lazy lamb slept peacefully in the field until hailstones fell. Larry the lazy lamb slept peacefully in the field until hailstones fell. Boom. So that's the sort of division. Now, if you want to sound a bit more London, Cockney, or possibly Essexy, you might get a substitute sound, which would sound like the vowel oo. You'll basically round on the ending parts. So if you did field until hailstones fell. So you might get Larry the lazy lamb slept peacefully in the field until hailstones fell. And you can go really big. You can go like Michael Caine, like field until it starts to sound almost a little bit London. But nonetheless, you can go really big on it or really subtle, where it almost just feels like you're kind of loosely doing the low lip, like field until hailstones fell. It's really subtle if you can. For RP, we want light L's and dark L's. For London, you can try for the light L and the substitute, but let's keep the main one together. So let's end it with doing the RP. Larry the lazy lamb slept peacefully in the field until hailstones fell. Give it a shot. Lovely. Okay, so neat. Let's do one or two more sounds and then we'll take a break. So the next one we've got here is an H. So an H is interesting. It can be very different depending on what English accent we're doing. You might get, for example, in Cockney sounds, them kind of gone. You might get Ari Obson, Ada Holiday, Ada Holiday in a Y. You might get that. You might get Harry Hobson. You might get a lot of excess air on it, on Liverpool maybe. But you want to kind of just get a medium amount of airflow. So just try this. Can you go, hooray? And that's it. Hooray. So can you go, Harry Hobson had a holiday in Hawaii? Great. I hope so. I hope you have. I hope you have your hat. We have to hide in here. So we get that. And what I would say is watch out for, if you want to do this, I hope so. I hope you have. I hope. That's just not enough air. So if you want to restrict airflow on that sound, just watch out for it. Cool. All right. So let's move on. Let's keep going. So NG. This is interesting because in this country, we've got a couple of options again, but for RP, we want to keep the NG continuous. So you would get smiling, singer was singing for the king. So if you're tempted to do smiling singer was singing for the king, just be careful. So can we try this? Can you sing an NG for me? Hooray. Now, remember, that sound is made back here. So feel the sound and the muscles that make it. Great. Now you have to close there at the end every time. The smiling singer was singing for the king. Try it. Fab. So there are other options in this country, but I'd say let's not worry too much about it. The main thing you could do that would start to sound quite different is do what's called a hard G. So, or dropping the ing, but you could go smiling, the smiling singer. You could go smiling singer. The smiling singer was singing for the king. You could smile in, singing. You could do that, or you could go singer, king. And it would almost turn into a K sound. Just listen out for that. If you ever hear a native English speaker do that, that's interesting. But I would say keep the ing sound sustained. Yeah, cool. Keep it simple. And, oh my gosh, we can totally do this. I'm going to finish with THs, and then we'll take a break, okay? So, apologies. I'm getting over a little cold. So, we have here THs. Now, this is actually a rather big one for Swedish speakers. You guys, I've noticed, have a tendency in the samples that you've given me and in the samples I found online to possibly turn these sounds into what's called a plosive, so an explosive sound. What we need is a sustained sound. And I know it takes up air and it takes up time, but that's what we need. And it'll also stop it from sounding quite so bouncy as well. So what I want to do is show you the different types of TH sounds, and then we'll try it on a sentence. So this is dental laminal. This is the one we're after. This is the one we want. Can you try this? Now, while you do this, can you put your hand on your throat? You'll notice there's no vibration there. It'll just be air. Now, can you add sound? There, you should feel like a lot of buzzing. Good. So that's unvoiced into voiced. So we have so this one might be like those. Sorry, actually, let's start with the unvoiced. Thick, pathetic, broth. Those brothers bathe. Now, be careful. If you want to go, those brothers bathe, just watch out. So make sure it has that buzzy quality. Now, the dentalized one is the one I've heard from some people. You want to watch out for this. You can go, instead of it being an actual sort of friction sound between the teeth, you might get thick, pathetic, broth, those brothers bathe. Try that. And then you might also get a T substitute on the unvoiced version. So number 3, you would go tik, pathetic, brot. And on number 3 on the other side, on the voiced, you'll get Ds, those brothers, or even you might get those brothers bid. That's almost Jamaican. So you can get a really clear D and T difference depending on the accent. You might also get those two in Irish as well. Fun fact. Number 4, this will happen in some London accents or even some Cockney ones. So you might, but it may not happen at the starts of words, just saying. So you might get fic, pathetic, broth as an F. And then you might do a V. So foes, brothers, bave. Hooray. Then you might get an S. Now this is fun. It's kind of almost French. You might get sic, pathetic, bros. Try that. And then zos, brothers, biz. Who knew? So T's and D's and THs, you can get massive amounts done on the accent as well as R's. Who knew? What I would say, guys, seriously, is just watch out for number 2. You want to do the tik, pathetic, brought those brothers bathed a lot. Actually, could we just go back to this woman again?
Once upon a time, there was a very curious little boy who lived in a large house with
Who lived in a. It was so subtle, but she did it.
the most magnificent garden. One day, a very old and frail woman came to the house and wanted to sell the family some flowers.
She's great at the T, actually. Wanted to sell, but then her D's go back towards the dental. Let's listen to this guy.
Quality, functionality, and simplicity. Come and enjoy the latest work of Sweden's finest interior designers.
All of those were on the teeth. So simplicity, functionality, Sweden, and that probably makes sense with the word Sweden, but you've got a lot of temptation to go to the teeth, so just watch out. That is a big giveaway, I think. And I say giveaway in the sense that if you're trying to sound purely RP, that would be your priority. Cool. Now, let's try the sentence. Look at those brothers bathe. Now we're going to try for the laminal dental between the teeth, and we're going to warm them up first. Can you go? Imagine there's like you're just sending a pure stream of sound through a thin piece of paper. It's going to buzz. You can even try like throwing, imagine you're throwing like a frisbee. It's kind of funny. Some people like that. Okay, good. Now can you try, look at those brothers bathe. Try that. Try it one more time. Look at those brothers bathe. And then we'll try the unvoiced one. It's a thick, pathetic broth. It's a thick, pathetic broth. Cool. So guys, we have completely earned a break. So what I'm going to do is we're going to pause here for 15 minutes and then we'll return and we'll start up with vowels. Okay? Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. All right, so hopefully you had a chance to get some water like I did. And I just wanted to open up by asking, do any of you guys have any questions right now? I think we have chat open. So if you have any questions, it'd be good to kind of address them before we move forward. And I'm just waiting for my lovely cameraman to tell me if at any point there is any questions. He will just let me know and we will address them. But if you're cool, then you keep listening. So, vowels. Now, vowels are probably half of the reason why accent work is so hard. Vowels are one of the most difficult things to pin down and actually be able to, describe, let alone replicate, especially when we're discussing something like a Swedish versus English. I mean, we have such amazing differences in our sound. And I'm sure you would agree that you guys have a whole range of sounds that would be very difficult and are very difficult for non-Swedish people to actually replicate. So we have similar situations, only in the sense that we're just not used to making them. So you guys might not be as used to making the sound that we're after and asking for, not that you can't necessarily hear it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a vowel chart, which is what I've drawn on the board. A vowel chart is part of the International Phonetic Alphabet, which is something that I might recommend you look into if you're really into what I'm about to show you next. This is going to be looking into how it is the tongue moves in relation to the vowel shapes we're going to be making. So effectively, guys, this is the top lip. This is the bottom lip and jaw. And this is the inside of your mouth and a graph. Obviously, you don't have a graph in your mouth, but it represents essentially where your tongue will be traveling in the mouth, right? So we have top, we have bottom, we have front, we have back, middle, and everywhere in between. Now, if you think about it this way, if you guys have ever seen a map of the sky at night, it's almost like in order to find stars, scientists put them on a grid. It's the same thing. We're going to put vowels in a place on this chart, and it's going to be like your star map, but of your tongue. Neat. So I have given you this chart, by the way, on page 7 of your sheet. So what I would first like to kind of talk about here are the extremes of sound. Now, I will be focusing on English sounds, by the way, but if there's any questions about Swedish sounds and stuff, there's an extended list. The chart I've given you on your actual worksheet is entirely English-based. There's more symbols. I'm sure you can imagine there's more symbols, but just not there. Okay, so the first one, this is E. Now, this sound is no stranger to you. This sound sounds like, it's quite high in the mouth. It's spread in the lips. If you were to actually put your finger again between your teeth, and can you give me E, E, 3 times? E, E, E. You will likely feel that the tongue is up, it is raised towards the top teeth. It's probably not that far, it's probably there. But we've also got a bit of a spread in the lips, and that's pretty much the main thing. So it's a high raised spread vowel. The next sound is this one. Now, the tongue is high and raised in that position. All it wants to do now is lower and relax slightly. So you're going to get E, E. Your lips are still going to be kind of flat and somewhat spread. So E, E. Now, what I would love to kind of quickly just make a note about is that I've heard in some lovely examples of English-speaking Swedish language stuff, is I've heard a tendency to go towards E. Now, that is probably because you have you just have a much bigger E sound than even English does. So when I say English, even as an American, I wouldn't say English. I say English. It's not English, which would be English, English. I go like kind of somewhere between English. It's really subtle, but hopefully you hear it. Let me try doing this. I'm going to slide from here to here slowly. E. So this is my tongue. E. Cool. So I'm going to go E, sorry, E, so subtle. Basically, just relax your regular E. Neat. Which is another E sound. Neat. Okay, great. Now this sound, if we were to allow the tongue to kind of lower a bit more, you're going to get an eh. Now this is this sound. Eh. We're kind of going just all the way down the front vowels. So E, try that. E, Cool. Neat. This one a little further down is And by the way, you'll notice that I'm drawing things that look like letters of some form of alphabet, but actually it's a symbol that represents pronunciation. So that's also what's on your chart. So just to be clear. So E, Try it again. Good. Now, can we slide from one to the other? So like this. Yeah. Try that. Great. Now, the one that's on the chart I showed you as well is this. That's a fun symbol. Looks like an A and an E combined, and that is ah. Ah. So we have yeah. Can you try something for me? Can you put your finger again between the teeth? And can I get you to see if it's true that your tongue moves down? Now, it's not going to be a big jump like it looks here. Obviously, your mouth is much smaller, okay? Yeah. At the bottom, my lips spread a little bit as well. And there's this one, last one on the bottom. Ah. Ah. Great. So this shows us the lowest point that our tongue could be at the bottom of our mouth. So we have ah. E, ah. Finger. E, ah. Ah, E. Now slide. Yeah. I. You can hopefully feel that giant leap the tongue takes. So that's the front vowels. Okay, cool. So now this is the sound that I think a lot of you probably, you've heard, but you may not realize quite how often English speakers use it. It's this sound. Upside down E. It looks like that. It's called a schwa. So in IPA, don't worry about that. But it's basically so you might get it in amazing, America, or gosh, I'm struggling. April. If you say April would be too much. April. So yay. So you get that. You've got the so that'll be right in the middle of the mouth, hence why it's right in down the middle line. Can you put your finger here and try that? Be very careful if your tongue is going too far back. It might go or too far forward. We want it to kind of almost create a little cup in the middle of your tongue, like a little bowl. Good. Then there's this one. Yay. That, and I do apologize right away for anybody suffering, suffering at this moment from dyslexia, because this is not fun. They are opposite of each other. That is how it's meant to be. Just note that it's a middle vowel, and this one sounds like this. So if you find the schwa again, just relax your tongue a little bit. It may not sound too different, but it'll feel different. So pay attention to that. It'll sound like in RP, nurse. So if you did the schwa on that sound nurse, N-U-R-S-E, you get nurse, as opposed to nurse. So the jaw and the tongue will drop. Cool. All right. The other middle vowel, mid-back vowel is this one. Now, This one sounds really similar to the hut, sorry, to the schwa sound, and I apologize again for that. But just believe me when I say that it is quite different. It's mostly energetically different. This symbol, this sound, can never appear in a phrase when that vowel is emphasized. So, for example, you would have it on the word. You take off the R and you'd go mother, but you wouldn't go mother, because it can't have any emphasis on it. So, but you know what can? That. So you'd actually get a little lift in the soft palate and you'd bring the tongue back a little bit, mother, and you'd relax it forward. It's super subtle and it might infuriate you a little bit, but don't worry, that's just how it is. So can we try this? Mother, mother, Cool. So leaving the middle of the mouth alone for a little bit, let's now go to the roof of the mouth again. So I'm going to change colors. I probably should have changed colors for the middle. I might go back and change them and make them pretty. But we've got here back vowels. Now, I know there's a symbol here on yours, the one that I gave you. I'll leave that just for now, so we don't use it a ton. So we'll do this one first. This is oo. So this is obviously a very rounded vowel. This is also not unusual for Swedish speakers to have. So can you try this? Ooh, ooh. Now, can you exaggerate it a lot? Can you go ooh, ooh? Great. Now relax it the most you can. Ooh, ooh. We kind of live somewhere between in English. Ooh, ooh. And in the UK, you might even hear a little slide from ooh, ooh, to kind of get that. That's a little confusing, but still it happens. So that might sound like goose, choose, to, we get it. Now, what's weird about this is that the most obvious thing about an oo is that the lips are rounded, but actually we don't realize that the tongue is back. Can you try this for me? Put the finger here between the teeth. And can you say E? So we're gonna go E, ooh. So we're gonna slide. Can you go ew? And notice that the tongue actually goes down or goes back. It's weird, but it does. Now don't freak out if you don't feel it. It's a weird one because you get distracted from the lips. Can you try the ooey? Ooey. You might feel that definitely come forward. So play with that later. Now, here's another symbol. This is This is a weird one. These two symbols are the ones that English use a lot, and a lot of non-native English speakers kind of hate them pretty understandably because they're the relaxed versions of the extreme, easier to hear sounds. So we've got and it sounds like foot or woman. We wouldn't say foot, woman, for example. Foot, so you go ooh, it's back, and then relax it forward. And just relax it down a little. Ooh, I also feel a little cup in the middle of my mouth when I do it, if it's useful. So you get neat. Now, just for the sake of having it, I think we don't really use this sound in English too much. This is a pure o, but it's useful to know where that is because this one we do use a lot. Now, you're going to go from ooh, so it's going to go down again, but you're going to keep your lips rounded. Ooh. And this is like the British sound, thought. So we'll associate words with these in a minute, but we've got thought and, yeah. Can we try that again? Or. Can we try awkward? Can we try lawyer? Thought. Great. Then we've got two more, and it looks like this. That is, if you go the furthest down and the most open rounded you could be, oh, and it sounds like lot or stop, hot, box. You would never say stop, hot, fox. You would kind of open it up, hot, stop, fox. Great. And then if you unround this a little bit, last vowel, you've got a sort of A symbol. This is ah, as in bath. So bath, cough, giraffe, dance, boom. Yeah. Now, this vowel up here, the one that I didn't include, it has a little line through it. That just means it's been centralized, which basically means that you're taking an E and you're putting it somewhere between E and U. So if you have E and U, you're going to go E, ew, 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 it's a weird in between vowel. So I wouldn't obsess. They use it in Australian. They use it in some forms of London English as well, particularly in diphthongs, but we'll touch on it as we need to. Don't obsess over that. Okay, so I know you may not have expected to see a bunch of vaguely funny symbols today, but just so you know, there are lots of free apps out there because this stuff, these symbols are really, really useful. They're clear. Everyone in the world knows what they mean when you have linguists looking at them, and they're in dictionaries. So if you go through and look at an English or an American or a German dictionary, any dictionary will have in brackets these symbols next to them. So, I mean, good ones anyway. And that helps you with the pronunciation. So I'm not suggesting you memorize them, but I am suggesting you maybe download some apps. So this is an app. This is free. It's called IPA Phonetics by John Essling. It's run by the University of Victoria, and it's great. The middle vowels are a little bit, because it's free, we have to accept that it's not going to be necessarily the best, but you know, you can do that. This is funny, hold on. And someone will make a sound. It's a vaguely terrifying face, but you know, you do that schwa. Hooray. And you can start to see, and you can also play with how fast and slow it is. And you can also look at consonants as well, but don't look at that. It's terrifying. There's too many consonants. You'll see, though, on this one, there's lots more symbols. There's another app that I'd recommend you check out. It's called Interactive IPA. It's by Paul Meyer, M-E-I-E-R. And he made this app, and what's cool about it is that it transfers between American and British. So you can kind of hear sounds between the two, and it also has a much more accurate middle portion of the sound production, so that's nice. I bought it, and it's only a few pounds. Anyway, so you don't have to remember all these symbols. Someone else has done it for you. Hooray. What I would now say is, can you please go to page 8? This is now the portion that would probably starts to address some of our concerns with vowels in general. We've got lexical sets. All of these symbols on their own mean a certain sound, but a lot of times in different accent work, we associate different words with these symbols. So let me explain. The word, let's go with this one. The word kit. Does that green show up okay on the camera? Great. The word kit. That sound could sound, depending on who's looking at it, in their own sort of accent, could be cat, kit, keet, coot, I don't know, could be something. We all could pronounce it differently. But when we're looking at one single accent, and in particular RP, we want to make sure that it is I, and that is this symbol, kit. So we associate all the words that sort of rhyme with I, kit, together. And English kind of just does this. We end up lumping words together. So for example, kit, bit, mit. I can think of a few rude words. We've also got mitten. We've got integrated. That's a fun one. The beginning of the word, integrated. We've got initiate. So all these sounds that, you know, that sound like I, you would be tempted potentially to say integrated, meet, kit, feet. as opposed to fit. But an English speaker would never confuse those two. So let me bring up this one. This is called the fleece set, an entire word, a bunch of words that rhyme with E, fleece. So both UK speakers and American speakers have this in common. We would never confuse these two. That is not true necessarily, I've observed, of Swedish people coming into English. Of course, I would assume that means because you probably don't have I very often or at all in your native language. So that would just be something to massively watch out for. There, of course, it depends on who you are and how familiar you are with English. So let's try an example here of a sentence. You might get, let's see, an amazing sentence. The little bee was on the ship with the sheep. So if you're somebody that naturally might confuse these two sounds, it may turn into the little bee was on the sheep with the sheep. You may not know that they're separated. Now, I'm not going to suggest that you guys don't know that, but it's kind of important to start here. So the little bee was on the ship with the sheep. And now you have symbols to associate with that sound. Try it out. Now, can I ask you to try something for me? You're alone at home, which probably means that you're able to hear yourself quite clearly. But just in case, could you try putting your hand, hover it over your ear, just a little bit over your ear. We don't want it to be pressed. And then take your hand and make a 90-degree angle and hover it over your face. So we don't want it pressed, we want it hovered. And you should be able to hear yourself really accurately, like you have a megaphone effect. What I want you to try to do is, and if that doesn't work for you, don't bother. But you could put your hand here and try the word be. Because what I want you to watch out for is that you're not overdoing that E sound for an English speaker. We don't want to hear this, for example. The little bee was on the ship with the sheep. The sheep. Try not to overstretch it. Relax that sound. So we're going to relax these two. Give it a shot. Great. Now that you've wrapped all that stuff in, and I'm going to assume you were stunningly perfect, let's wrap in some of the intonation pattern that we noticed before, right? So we've got, let's say we want to emphasize little. The little bee, let's say we're going to go up. The little bee was on the ship with the sheep. We'll go up on each one that we want to emphasize, yeah? And actually, sorry, I'll keep this flat. Okay, so the little bee was on the ship with the sheep. Try that. Great. Now, can you put up your hand and can you imagine you are literally going to be tossing the whole phrase forward? What we want to avoid is the little bee was on the ship with the sheep. We want to avoid it feeling like staccato. So we have to keep it flowing. So if you take up your hand, imagine you have a Frisbee in it. Can you go, the little bee 3 times? The little bee, the little bee, the little bee. Good. So the little bee was on the ship with the sheep. Try that. Was on the ship with the sheep. One more time. The little bee was on the ship with the sheep. Cool. So it's a silly phrase. You're never going to say this phrase in your life, but it's good to know that there's a way forwards. If you feel like you're getting really stuck in the sort of sort of slightly more almost staccato or dab-like sort of intonation pattern, it can be really hard to break and maybe start to look at your consonants, right? You might be doing that T thing again that we observed Henrik doing earlier. So you might go little b. You wouldn't do that, but you know. The little, make sure there's a lot of air coming forward on that T, for example. The little b. Try that. Good. Was on the ship. Now make sure that's a Z and make sure that TH is accurate. Was on the ship. Now make sure that P releases air. Was on the ship with. So the little bee was on the ship with the sheep. You're going to feel like you're always releasing air. Try it. It's going to be weird at first. You're probably going to feel like you're breathing differently, or you have to breathe more, or just differently, and that's accurate, okay? Initially, that will be the case. It feels different. Okay, good. Moving on. So now that we've talked about kit and fleece, let's talk a little bit about the dress set. Now, what I'm going to start to do is I'm going to start to draw in these lexical sets, the groups of words next to the sounds. So this is fleece. Okay, this is kit. Great. By the way, if I do not put a lexical set, one of these words next to a symbol, it doesn't mean that this doesn't have, you know, a sound. It's just that for the accent RP, we don't use it as much, so it doesn't really have a group of words that rhyme with it. You can still hit it. For example, dress. This is dress. Oops. Now, we're trying to listen for that sound. Dress. You will get sounds like end, bed, say ked, it's not a thing. End game, can't think of words now. How delightful. So you've got end, bed, TED, ketamine, anything, everything, amazing. Now, you might realize some of those are spelt with the letter A, but it's actually pronounced with an E, anything, anything, especially. Now, this sound, is just not used as often in RP, but it could be used if the speaker was speaking really quickly. So they could say, for example, instead of dress, they could say dress, dress, if they're being very fast. Or if they're like South African Australian, that would be very likely. Things would start to raise. You might also hear that in dress, dress. Might hear it in some Southern, some old-fashioned Southern accents in the United States, or you might hear it in heightened RP. Very happy, happy. Right, might get that. Very fun. So, dress. So let's add this in. It was a test. It was a test that Bess, say, the little bee was on the ship with the sheep. Let's say, take out sheep. The ship with let's add sheep back in. Okay. So we have one there with the rest of the sheep. So we'll continue to watch out for this one to make sure we're not overdoing it, but we'll just add in that. Can we try this? The little bee was on the ship with the rest of the sheep. Try it out. Huzzah. So that one actually is not usually too difficult for most people. That one we kind of get. What I would like to move on to do is this one. Now, there's some debate about what UK speakers use symbol-wise. I don't need to involve you in that nonsense because that's for linguists to decide. Basically, let's just go with the fun-looking one, and we will go with the AE symbol. So this is the trap set. Now, here's where this gets really interesting. The trap set it sounds really similar actually to American. I say trap, and here they might say trap, trap. It's just slightly more narrow and slightly more whip-like. Trap, So we get cat, mat, sat, flat. I'm going to get my cat from the flat. Okay, I'm going to get my cat from the flat. It just sounds like you're stretching it sideways if it's American. Cool. Now here's though where we start to get something interesting, and that's called a split, a lexical split. So trap versus bath. Now you may right away know where I'm going with this, but in American, trap and bath, they sound the same. In the UK though, they're different. So we'd get this symbol in the UK, and we get this one over here for bath. So we might, for example, you get words, so this would be cat, mat, flap, tat, as in tattoo. You might also get bath, giraffe, dance, cough. I'm hesitating because I'm not used to separating them daily, so this is new for me too. So what I would say is you can kind of create a fun sentence to combine them. You could go, yikes, what a sentence. Okay, so I've decided to give you that the cat was dancing with the rat and calling her fat. How very sad. So we have here an opportunity to do two different symbols, and we will do that. So let's say I'll do the cat was dancing with the rat, and calling is different. Her fat. I shouldn't have written calling. Let's see. You know what? Fine. We have to change it up, but I will do this. Okay. The cat was dancing with the rat and asking her questions. So we've got a nice clean separation of the two, and there's no more discussion of people calling each other fat. So can we go ahead and try the sentence on your own? Go ahead. Lovely. So now I'd like you to make a choice. Where would you put the emphasis? Can you try now to pick some words that you think are interesting, and can you go up to emphasize just like we heard some other people do before? So we rise and then fall. Give it a shot. So probably a combination of successes there. What I would maybe bring your attention to at this point is that this sound, the ah, it really seems to want to hold itself out. Have you found that? So you could easily, if you put up your hand, you can imagine you're pushing into like a soft pillow wall. You can go dancing. Try that. And then asking. Cool. And then put up your hand here for the little whip. Can you just go cat, rat, and. So we've got two hands. We've got flick and we've got press. So can you go, the cat was dancing with the rat and asking her questions. Try that. Great. So then, you know, some of these are what's called short vowels and long vowels. It's not a sort of, it's a formal thing, but it usually is a bit more just based on feel. These ones tend to just be held out longer because they're relaxed and long, and these tend to be shorter because they're spread, and spread sounds generally tend not to be elongated in English. So, excuse me. So I think that's pretty good for that. So let's just go ahead and continue on. Now, we also have here in the UK, we have a nice a separation of another series of sets. Now, this is called, actually, let's just go ahead and continue to move backwards now that we're here. This is what's called the nurse set. Cool. So, sorry, it's a little squishy. The nurse set. So can we find the schwa again? Can you go, and then relax it? Nurse. Great. So the nurse set, that one sounds like purse, curse, first. We've got anything that basically has IRS or ER in the spelling. So I will write down example of that. So can we try this? Now this is a longer sound as well. You're going to notice as well that all the R's are not there. So you're not going to get curse first. That would happen if there was, you know, if it was a rhotic accent and we actually did the R's, but we don't in this accent. So put up your hand again, curse, and send it forward. And can you say purse, first, thirst? And make sure that TH is the one we want, not thirst, but thirst. Curse, purse, first, thirst. Yeah, perfect. And you would never confuse it, let's say, for the dress set, which would be best, test. So let's say, another winning phrase. So the curse was how to find the best leather first. I'm assuming this is a leather shopping spree. So we've got this, let's see, we've got the curse and we've got first. And then just because dyslexia and everything, I'm just gonna just write this, best leather. I'm gonna also just highlight for you the TH and TH. So just watch out for those. Try them all now. The curse was how to find the best leather first. Try it again. Now, can I give you a challenge? You're going to try to emphasize this, which means that we're going to go up here. The curse was how to find the best leather first. So we're going to do this one and that one. Try it. Good. Now, pay attention again to best. Don't go best leather, best leather. Let the air come forward. So best leather, best leather. You're going to feel like everything's literally falling forwards. And leather first. Let the TH bring it forward. So we're going to connect words together. So shoo and shoo. And was how. Try that. Good. All right, so that hopefully is quite clear. And moving on. So this, by the way, this schwa, it does have an entire list of words that belong to it. And it does have a lexical set. It's called the comma set. Good. Comma. And it's the end of the word, comma, comma. So you wouldn't go comma, comma, or comma. You'd go comma, comma, the sort of schwa ending. So you might get a range, ton, you might get fun. Oh, that might, because it's a single vowel, it might be more on this territory. So actually, let's go with mother, father, sister, brother. Ending ones are always going to be that kind of sound. There's a good chance, by the way, that you and I have something in common. with this accent, we probably want to try too hard on the ending R's. So can I try to challenge us both to do something? We're going to say mother, brother, sister. But what I want you to do is when we have to drop this R, we're not going to over open our mouth. So this is what I do not want to see. Mother, brother, sister. Don't overdo it. So we're just going to make it as cash as possible. Mother, brother, sister. You just always do it that way. Try it again. Good. Because all of these are schwas and none of them can be emphasized. It's as if you're about to say something else, but you just don't. Mother, brother, sister. Toss it away. Try it again. Good. And that is distinctly different from, let's say, this one, which is the strut sound, the strut set. So the strut symbol is emphasized every time. So we've got here, love. It'll sound the same, remember, but the difference is that this is always in a stressed position. So because this symbol, the syllable is stressed, we've got the hut. So that's what I call this thing, the hut. So love, the word come, or London is a good one. So can we try this? Put up your hand, say, come to London. Come to London, mother. Now here's a confusing bit. I just said mother. That would be a schwa. That would be the hut. So, come to London, mother. Boom. Do we have a question? Oh, excellent. So sorry. He looked very excited. So, come to London, mother. We must have duck. Try that. Come to London, mother. We must have duck. We must have duck and onion stuffing for lunch. So the thing that's hard about this sound, I think, is that a lot of times it doesn't, well, sometimes it doesn't always come with an O. And even if it does, that makes you want to go London, love, mother. It makes you want to instinctively round. So just kind of recognize that this is going to be actually quite a flat sound. Your lips are going to be flat. The soft palate's going to be lifted like we discussed, but it's not going to be rounded at all. It's in fact just pretty bland. It just has a bit of sort of extra volume emphasis to it, if that makes sense. So come to London, mother, flat. Try it again. Come to London, mother. We must have duck. Great. We'll leave the sentence there, but very nice. So that's where we've got going on there. Let's move on to the back vowels. This is the goose. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The goose set is, in American, you'd get kind of a little more traditional goose. You wouldn't hear goose, which you might hear from some of my Spanish relatives, actually. I have a Mexican side to me. But you might get goose from them, but we want to relax that, and then you get goose. What you might get from some British people, especially in London, is you might get what's called a diphthong. So it's not a single vowel, it's a double. So we've got maybe goose, ooh, goose, goose. So you might say, I'd love to choose that for myself. I'd love to choose, not I'd love to choose. That makes sense? So it kind of creates a weird in-between place where the tongue is, as opposed to a clear destination, which is why it doesn't sound so, it's not easy to get. And it also is why if you went choose, it would sound really obvious to someone who's not used to doing that. So you might get kind of that going on. Let's try this. The Okay, I've again come up with a great phrase for you. The moose was choosy. So the moose, just to be clear, moose is that big sort of animal. So the moose was choosy. Can we try to do it on purpose? A really big ooh. The moose was choosy. Try it. And then can we try relaxing it a little? The moose was choosy. Now, can we try this little subtle jump? Can you go oh. It's like you're saying ooh, but you're lazy. Or like a valley girl. Can you say the moose was choosy? Very good, I hope. And what I would hope to also suggest as well is that you might be tempted to do this. The moose was choosy, or the moose was choosy. The initial first bit of starting on a schwa is actually really important. So you have to make sure the beginning of the diphthong is in place. Otherwise, we get kind of a little lost sometimes. So if you go ooh, ooh, ooh. Try with the finger between the teeth. Ooh, ooh, choose. You'll notice the tongue doesn't really move very much at all. Good. So let's leave that for now. Good. This symbol here, which we have kind of talked a lot about-ish, is the foot. Foot set. So in English, we'd rhyme words like foot, would, could, should, woman, book. It's a very strange sort of in-between sound. When actually I introduced that sound to native English speakers, they're always like, what? They didn't even realize it was a thing. So, but yeah, we distinguish it. So, you know, we would never say, you know, I could love the moose. I don't know, I could love the moose. We clearly distinguish the two. So that's worth noting. Okay, let's not linger too long on that one though. You know, moving on. So this was quite distinctly British, and I think that's where this one kind of comes into play. We don't really use this one again very much, so let's leave it. But this is the thought set. Now, I'd like to make a note here that this is another situation where the UK differs from the United States. Thought, and I'll just write this one in now, lot. This is different. Thought, lot. Or, ah. Whereas American, thought, lot. Rhymes, easy, kind of. But we've also got this happening, so yeah. We have to distinguish between the rounding and the rounding opening that we need for each one. So let's try this. Thought first. You get words that rhyme with all here, like awkward, gorgeous, calling, talk. So let's say I'm going to talk, and I'm over rounding on purpose, by the way, to show you. It's kind of a giveaway is over rounding on this sound, I know. So we're talking. We're talking to Paul. I'll leave that open because I'm going to add in some lot sounds in a second, but let's practice this first. We're talking to Paul. Try it. Okay, sorry for going in front of that. We're talking to Paul about I don't know where I'm coming up with these phrases, but that's what I've done. So we're talking to Paul about rocking chairs and dancing bears. Rhyming for you. Okay, so we're talking to Paul about rocking, and now this is the lot set. Rocking chairs, and now we've got the nurse set, and dancing bears. So no R's. And let's give that a shot. Actually, and let's just go ahead and be accurate, right? Cool. Try that. Try this one. Sorry. So on the top here, we've got Paul's daughter, Laura, was awfully awkward. So this is going to be strange. Here's what I recommend you do. Don't do what I just did, actually, and emphasize each one almost in a punchy way. Make it as smooth as possible. So Paul's daughter, Laura, try not to make a big deal about it, if that makes sense. Laura was awfully awkward. Try that. Now, you may be wondering, how do I blend it all together without sounding like I'm not articulating anymore and being clear? So what you then have to do is make sure that you are really playing up the connection words and sounds. So Paul's daughter, taking off that, you don't get that one. Laura was awfully, make sure that L is there. Awkward, make sure that K is there, and you take that air forward. Awkward. You can go ahead and drop that. Paul's daughter, Laura, was awfully awkward. Just keep it moving. Try that. Good. Hopefully that was a fraction easier. You might also try the phrase hot dog. It's a fun one. Hot dog, I would say, but you'd get this hot dog. Looks like a capital D, but I'm actually doing the lot set, just to be clear. Hot dog. So actually, why don't we add in one more thing about Laura? Paul's daughter, Laura, was awfully awkward around dogs. Around boxing dogs. Let's do that. Dogs that box. So we've got boxing dogs. So Paul's daughter, Laura, was awfully awkward around boxing dogs. I've given you a very hard phrase. Try it. Great. Another trick, guys, that you might consider is if you're a little worried about, you feel like you're just doing too much speaking now, which is probably accurate. We've been going for a while. You might consider trying whispering it. I know that sounds strange because no voice people ever say whisper, but don't throw too much air through, and you should actually have a fairly accurate accent going on. It's strange. I think once we take the speaking away, we can actually just kind of get to work. We don't judge ourselves too much. So if you go, you can kind of try that. Give it a go. And once you've whispered it, try speaking it right away. Good. Hopefully that did something for you. If it didn't, oh well. You can always go back to, just speaking it. All right. So that, in effect, is kind of done with our vowels. That doesn't obviously end the whole discussion of what it is we're talking about in terms of, making sounds full stop, because we've got something called diphthongs. We've got vowels that join up with another vowel and, again, makes two. So let's quickly run over some of those. And this is kind of actually what I'd like to maybe do is take a quick listen to another RP example just to refresh our heads, and then we'll listen to somebody else in Swedish again, just to kind of hear what maybe happens, okay? So just to refresh ourselves, because I'm American, let's listen to another RP speaker again.
I got to Gardinor, which is where the Eurostar goes from, and I suddenly realised that I didn't have my passport. So, bit panicked, I called my husband, and he jumped in a taxi, and he must have got there about 10 minutes before the train left. So I did get to London, and I went to a festival set up like a rock festival, but it's actually a comedy festival. And I think it's one of its kind in England. It's the second year it's been running, and it was really good fun. And I saw 3 very big comedians performing on the large stage. And on the little stage, there were lots of up-and-coming comedians. I saw 2 of them, and they were incredibly funny. And at the end of the big shows on the big stage, there were fireworks, and we all had a really good time.
I have a dog. He's a black Labrador, and his name's Horace. And a couple of weeks ago, we went out for a walk, and there's lots of cattle prods sort of where we live. Horace is very scared of them, and usually he doesn't normally go anywhere near them, so we have to kind of walk around them. But a couple of weeks ago, he decided that he was going to investigate a little, I think it was a little a branch he'd found, and it was sort of wedged in the cattle prod, the cattle grid, sorry.
Lovely. So, and actually, hopefully by re-listening to these people, I'm hoping that you're actually hearing now how they keep the phrase moving and how they tend to join up words together. It's a very advanced thing to do. But once you've broken down how to perfectly say each word, it's really important to then connect everything together. Otherwise, it really doesn't sound quite like English. The thing I just want to bring up now that we've heard him again, do you notice how he said little? Just so you know, I'm not ignoring that. It's just that is a very interesting thing he's doing. It's quite an old style of speaking for RP. He does one random thing, and that's little. It's where you release the air sideways. Little. Even spit for you. So enjoy that. But you can try that yourself. But that wouldn't be a more contemporary thing to do. Okay, let's listen to Henrik again.
Swedish sculptor Carl Milles, 1875 to 1955, was a towering figure in the Swedish art world during the first half of the 20th century. He was a productive artist that received many public art commissions in Sweden and beyond. At the time when
On a side note, did you hear, Henrik, in Sweden and beyond? It kind of became almost rhythmic. I said way before how we might talk a little bit about stress. We have talked about stress, but that's the difference between that and Sweden. It's not so predictable in English. Then and beyond, Sweden and beyond, right? Want to avoid the kind of galloping rhythm, which is very fun, but not quite what we need. So if we could back it up, actually, Henrik is doing awesome work, but one thing I heard right away.
Sculptor Carl Milles, 1875 to 1955.
Five. This is where actually the word five, it almost sounds flat. And that's where we get the depression of the soft palate, what we discussed way again at the beginning. So this is what's called the price set. The price set here, words that rhyme with this are the letter I, my, time, fly, crime. Oops. Well, cry actually works too. Crime. So what we don't want to do is hear this. I, my, time, fly, cry, crime. You also hear this sort of lowering of the soft palate sound where it almost sounds like too flat. You hear that in Russian as well. So just be careful. We don't want to encourage that. So can you do this again, guys, just to re-warm ourselves up? Can you do the ng-ah finger? Na, na, na. Warm that up. Na, na, na. Na, na, na. Remember the cupcake? Very good. All right, so we'll keep that activated nice and bright. And can you go, I? You're going to feel like you're really trying for energy here. My, time, fly, cry, crime, 1955. Good. So if we listen again, you can probably hear him now.
Sculptor Carl Milles, 1875 to 1955, was a towering figure in the Swedish art world during the first half of the 20th century.
Good. So actually, you really, Henrik, you're not that far off, not at all. It's just enough tiny things in a row to make it sound like the overall package is just still slightly off, right? So we'll just continue to watch that. So the face set, might hear this in the female example, actually. Let me see. Tanya, we back to you.
But now getting dark outside and cold. Does it take the happiness from me?
Take.
No, I don't think so. The evening air is cool on my skin. There are no farmers anymore. No dogs barking. Inside the house, people are talking, discussing politics and other people's decisions. A normal life. Will you ever have one, Tanya? I wonder, a really normal life with a family, kids, pets, a great job and loving people.
You know, actually, Tanya, you're doing perfectly fabulously on the face set. I actually think I've heard some more inconsistencies on some other examples. So we'll just in general mark it. I think just making sure it's not face, that's face, but also just make sure it's also not it's not too high up. Can I maybe just make a few notes of sounds for you? So that'd be face, case, place, taste. Anything that rhymes with a, like a, right? So we've got that. The goat sound. Now this is quite distinct for the UK, okay? We've got goat, goat. Now this is a really difficult sound to get. You'll be very tempted probably by its spelling to go goat, goat, or goat, goat, if you hear people. And I've had a few examples of people on a variety of sort of backgrounds kind of really overdo this sound. So for giggles though, can we overdo this sound on purpose? Can we say, oh, oh, like you're very affronted. Oh, great. So now what you've done essentially is you've gone, oh, oh. What we want to do is we want to start from here, from the schwa sound. So can you just do this? And now keep it there. Oh, oh, it's much smaller than you think it is. Oh, I can try, oh no. So can we try goat, snow, low, toe, flow, moat. Right? So all of these things, guys, are moving from one vowel to the next. And what we're doing here, for example, on this one is going from the middle of the tongue, middle of the mouth, to the back, but not too far back. Otherwise, you're going to get oh, oh. Or if you go too far forward, oh, oh. It's a weird in between. So there's a reason it's hard. By the way, the American one, just so you know, starts here, oh, and you go, oh, oh, oh no. I'm supposed to, oh no. So I literally feel like my tongue starts really far forward to me, and then it goes back. And I'm used to it going forward, so that's weird. So we all have things that we're working on. I would say, guys, we'll just generally watch out for any distortions on these sounds. I think that the main thing that we need to watch out for overall when it comes to Swedish versus, the UK are the fleece set. We need to watch out for the strut sound, the comma sound, the bath sound, making sure that that's there, the thought, and maybe even the price, because I think that's been heard a few times, and generally the goat. So it sounds like I'm saying everything, but I'm not. Everyone kind of has to worry about everything when it's not the way you sound. But this is great. So we're actually doing really well on time. And what I'd like us to do, let me just take a quick look at my sheet briefly. Great. I would like us to try Dolly's Last Hurrah, which I've offered you at the very end of your worksheet. So the way this is going to work is I'd like you to now notice that there's two versions of this sort of script that I've given you. It's, by the way, this script is specifically done. It's a poem, and it's done the way it's done just for accent work. So it doesn't sound like the most amazing bit of poetry you've ever read. And it certainly is a little bit disjointed, kind of like my sentences. They're designed to kind of isolate sounds. But what I'd like you to do is go from page 9, look at it briefly, and then go to page 10 and look how it's now written in all of the lexical sets. There will be some lexical sets we didn't discuss, but don't worry about that. We'll talk about it. And we can also talk line by line a little bit about what might be problematic. Can I specifically actually get you to look at just maybe the first 8 lines? So all the way until I feel the flashing claws of chalk-white terror rip at my breath. What a lovely phrase. So we can go from that. So from the beginning to that. Take a moment. I'll give you 2 minutes to read it out loud, look it over. Okay, so you may have hopefully gotten a little further than I was able to. It turns out I write very large. That is probably a good thing. So we'll go to here just for now. So can I get you guys now, if you haven't had a chance to do so, can you please try reading this out loud to yourself and try to do a British RP accent? If you feel like you're overwhelmed, like you're not sure you're doing it right, don't worry. We're obviously going to mark it in a second. So give it a shot. So what's really challenging about this is that it's not natural speech. It's a poem, and it's going to be a little bit, it doesn't seem to naturally connect together. Great. So it's a challenge. So what I'd like us to do first is identify where the sort of work needs to happen. Where are the vowels that we need to worry about? Can you go to please page 10? So you'll notice that Dolly's last hurrah is the very first one. Just go to number 2. What frosty land is this? So we know now, because of all the work we've done, that in this accent, the cloth set, which we haven't talked about, but lot and cloth rhyme. So I know that. So that means it's fro, oh. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the symbols on here. You can always reference back to the actual graph or any notes you've been taking, right? So and you can also kind of say this as well. What frosty land is this? So we have land is this. So can we try this? What frosty land is and then is this? O, a, I. What frosty land is this? How was, now be very careful. This one wants to be, well, it could be was or could be was. In the UK, I would actually say that although it says the strut set, which it is, the strut set sometimes in the UK will turn into this one. It's just this word. So don't worry, but I think it's was. How was its fate decided? How was its fate decided? Its fate. So we have the kit. We have the face. Decided. And this is the price. Decided. And you might get this as well. Now, I do want to stress, these symbols can massively stress people out. So if you are one of those people, maybe you want to make notes on your own piece of paper. Maybe you want to try to draw symbols. I'm kind of doing hand gestures as well, and I'm trying to do them to help you out with kind of how fast and short, how fast and sharp, or how long the sounds can be. So we'll go from that. Can we try? What frosty land is this? How was its fate decided? Try that. Great. Now we've got coal. So that is the goat set. So now we're going to try for the schwa and that sort of relaxed U. Coal black. So we've got a nice ah again. Coal black. Mountains. Mountains, just do a capital I there, mountains, loom. Now here's our lovely goose set. Remember this one? This was the tricky one. So we've got a nice little schwa to a U, loom. Glassy, we might get the bath set here. Glassy pools, once again. Reflect. This might be a schwa, right? A schwa, reflect. To the dress set, da. Reflect. Reflect there. Ooh, lovely. We've got the nurse set right there. There. Huge. Now, what you may not know is that there's a silent sound here in English. It sounds like a Y is there, but actually, like, hey, you can think of it this way. Huge. So we're going to go huge. Queer. Now, this is weird, but we haven't talked about this. Queer. It ends on a schwa there. Queer forms. So we've got the thought set. Whew, it's a lot of symbols. But, one moment. Sorry. Okay, cool. Forms. Now that we've sort of plugged in where the work needs to happen, now let's see if we can figure out how to kind of link all these words together, right? So, because we might be tempted to go, what frosty land is this? I just want to remind you, please watch out for your T's and D's. So now let's mark up T's and D's, right? What frosty? So I'm going to single underline T's and D's just to remind you, don't put them on the teeth. Okay, cool. What frosty land is this? How was its fate decided? Now I decided, sorry, 3. Coal black mountains loom. Glassy pools reflect their huge queer forms. Cool. That's, I think it's probably safe. Okay. So we've got that. I'm going to circle now the THs, and then I'm going to let you try it. Okay. Obviously you could be trying it even without me, but let's see if I can do this. Loom, glassy pools reflect their huge queer forms. All right. So can I get you to try to put this all together? Once again, let the T's and D's be in the gum ridge. Give it a shot. Cool. Now, let's back it up and actually talk a little bit about those L's, because I'm sure it's been forever since we've remembered them. Remember, we have 2 possibilities for L's here, so let's mark them out. If we are going to do a dark L, I'm just going to make a capital L like that. And if it's a regular light L, la la la, I'm going to leave it because I think you guys might be probably really talented at those. So what frosty land is this? Regular L for you. How was its fate decided? Coal black. Coal. Now here's where I struggle. This is why I keep struggling. I want to do 2 dark L's. It's actually 1 big L and then a regular one. Coal black. Coal black. Coal black. Mountains loom. Glassy pools, you can do a big L, dark L there. Reflect, The huge queer forms. Everything else is cool. All right, why don't you try adding in that now? Okay, now I would like to maybe also make another note here that, we've got the possibility here for a lot of ending consonants to potentially end up a little sharp. So let's now find where we're going to put our emphasis. Okay, again, it's a poem, so it's obviously up for debate. However, I'm going to do this in orange. What frosty land is this? What frosty land is this? Do. So why don't we do what frosty land? Let me make frosty and land kind of both fun and together. So we're gonna, what frosty land is this? How was its fate decided? How was its fate decided? Let's go, how was its fate decided? Decided. Cool. Let's just try that much. What frosty land is this? How was its fate decided? It's too many. I think there's too many. Just do, how was its fate decided? That's better. Because actually, if you go, how was its fate decided? You start to get dun, da-dun, da-dun, again, kind of Italian-esque, which we don't need. How was its fate? A lot of times English loves to run up into a sentence, into a key word. So can we put up our hand again? And we go, how was its fate? One more time. How was its fate? How was its fate decided? Now add the up and down. So coal black mountains, black mountains loom. So mountains loom, loom. Let's make this higher up than this one. Okay, coal black mountains loom. And now we can go up here. Glassy pools reflect to do the huge queer forms. We'll just do that much. Minimal is better. Try that. So obviously, guys, this may not be necessarily where you want to put the emphasis, and I would buy that. In fact, I'm not 100% happy with what I just did, but it's a decision and it's made. Now, what I would say is that I like kind of drawing this way. I'm just kind of looking and appreciating it for RP standards, just because it kind of gives a much better idea of how long you need to be breathing for. So what frosty land is this? How was its fate decided? Coal black mountains loom. Glassy pools reflect their huge queer forms. So you could go up and down as much as you want. You also can go down. We haven't discussed down, and we've only really talked about the ups and downs. But you could also kind of, the thing you can also do in the UK is you can kind of flick it. So can we try this for a second? We found the arc. Now let's find the flick. So what frosty land is this? Can we go, I'm going to draw this. A little, no, I need another color. Another purple star whenever I want you to flick a short sound. So what frosty land is this? How was its fate decided? How was its fate decided? Why not? Coal black, let's do that. Coal black mountains. The glassy pools reflect, let's do that one. Reflect the huge queer forms. Those are kind of louder. Huge queer forms are longer. So can we try this? Put up your hand. Mention you have a little whip in it. Can you try frosty, frosty, fate, fate, reflect, reflect. So when you, if you can match them with the ups, if they land on one, that's the dream. So what frosty land is this? How was its fate decided? Coal black mountains loom. Glassy pools reflect their huge queer forms. And you might even add one here, huge, if you want, almost on the H, but that's an idea, right? So there's a lot to do there, but hopefully that's making sense. If we were to look at continuing that, you know, it keeps going. A bird-like woman stretches slowly through the trees. We get lots of opportunity for vowel stretching and work there. I'm just going to check in super quick. Are there any questions so far that you can see? Fantastic. So what I might actually suggest is, I mean, I'm not sure if we need to go through the entire thing, but what I wonder, because this is actually where I had intended to end, because we're ahead of time a little bit. What I might suggest is taking, and actually we're not that ahead of time. We're actually just about, we should be ending now. So that's actually quite fortunate. So sorry, I just misread my thing. I guess, you know what, guys, I might say, you know, we've done a lot of work today, and we've just done a lot of discussion on, you know, a lot of topics. You know, we've covered everything from the anatomy, going into all the key consonants and wrapping it into vowels and talking about the beginnings of International Phonetic Alphabet work. I mean, it's been a heavy day. So I would really make sure that, you know, you don't obsess too hard. But if you could take a few things away from today, I would really hope that listening to the comparison between RP and some of our lovely, beautiful samples from you guys, thank you again so much, Henrik and Tanya. Thank you so much for sending those in. I think that was super helpful in terms of getting some real world experience of what the difference is. I have personally taken away a massive difference, I think, and quite a unique difference from you guys on the stress and the melody compared to the RP equivalents. So I would really, guys, listen to British shows, to American shows, and really pay attention. As long as you've got all of, you know, technically all the consonants, all the vowels kind of plugged in, if you're good on that, then the next step really is coming to figure out how to make the melody and the stress yours. It's one of the more invasive things to change. If I were asked to change the way I did my ups and downs, I'd feel very strange. The voice is, you know, our identity. So make sure that, you know, you continuously wrap this kind of work into your character work. I would also recommend pretty heavily that if you're trying to adjust your accent, make sure that it's for a character to start. It'll probably have more success because you'll be able to really work hard on one thing and then leave it and go order your coffee or talk to your friends normally. You know what I mean? Don't try to change everything at once. Try a monologue, work on that. And if you're really looking for some other way to continue working, I can recommend a book to Jamie later, and I can send the link. It's a really great book by Helen Ashton and Sarah Shepherd on accent work, and they're native to the UK. And it's a lot of the work we've done here, but with lots of drills and, you know, an audio MP3 references. So you can get to work and have fun. Please, guys, don't hesitate to ask any questions. I am super happy to be of contact and help to you. And I just really hope and wish you the best and hope that this was useful for you. Thank you so much for your time. Bye-bye.